Here we are at Command Central. We're going to do another mountain climbing movie. I knew we were here for some reason. All the props are set up. We've got my cigar, we've got my scotch here, and I'm going to reach over and we're going to start this here pretty soon. This is going to be the climb of the Thorn. It's a first ascent of the Thorn in the Alaska Range. It had not been climbed prior to that this climb, and it had not been named. Oh, the camera got moved. Are we still in focus and everything? All right. This was in June of 1975. Ken Irving and I. Ken Irving lives in Fairbanks also. We headed out of Fairbanks, driving south toward the Alaska Range through Delta Junction on the Richardson Highway. Got out of the cars, headed up the Canwell Glacier, over Yeti Pass down into the Gakona Glacier to where it tees off and heads out to its terminus, and then back up the other arm of the Gakona Glacier to the Thorn. Nobody had been there yet, and well, there was rumor. There might have been someone in there who tried it. I can't remember the exact story. But this was in the early days. We were learning a lot of different things. Here I might point out a couple of techniques we used that you wouldn't use anymore. But first, I'm going to pour myself some scotch just to get through this thing. And this was some of the old equipment. I had an old Alpinist pack, nice pack. Ken was taking bushwhacker skis. It was a new fad right at that moment. Short, wide skis. They didn't work out all that well for the snow conditions we had. Okay, here we go. Stand back. You're looking at the film. We just got out of the Jeep Commando there, the 1973 Jeep Commando Lemon. That's me in the film there, putting on my pack. It's a typical pack. But this is a summer pack. This is kind of nice. Winter packs are a lot heavier. So this was a pleasant endeavor. We were going from hiking up to slushy snow on the Canwell Glacier, and then we'd be on skis. Always disappointing to have to carry skis. You'd much rather just go in the winter. Any smart person who wouldn't climb in the summer, they'd just go in the winter and ski right from the car. This is the normal playground, or most common playground for Fairbanks mountain climbers down in the Delta Range. This is the first snow you run into. Ken's punching through miserable stuff. The Delta Range is the east end of the Alaska Range, between the Richardson Highway and the Alaska Highway that goes past Tok. Here's my skis. These are the hottest, latest skis on the market. They were just Fisher Europa 77s that I painted with polka dots on account of I was trying to introduce color into the climbing arena, and it was very difficult to get the climbers to wear color, so I'm the camera guy. You won't see me on this film except for that first little stretch. I had all the color, and Ken had typically boring color climbing clothes, which is normal for the era. So we don't have all the color I'd like. That's why we had the wands on there. Now we carry these 3-foot bamboo wands with flagging tape on them. Besides their purported use of wanding your trail in case you're in a whiteout or in difficult conditions, they put a little color into the camera. Ken's bushwhackers skis didn't have the flotation of the long skinny skis, so he was punching through for a few miles there while we were in that nasty snow. But you get above the warm weather, and any skis were perfect in the snow we had. It was variously warm and cold. It was variously nice weather and miserable weather. A few clouds went by. Took us 2 days, the normal trip up to Yeti Pass from the Richardson Highway up to the top of Canwell Glacier. we camped right up at the pass, and then went down the Gakona. Now, the camera, there's a Stephenson warm light tent, the original 2-pole version in the early days there, extremely high quality tent. It's the only tent to have. It'll take any winds whatsoever. Easy to set up, double wall. This is the camp up on the Yeti's Pass. And there we walked over. We took a leisurely morning, and the next morning when we camped, and walked over to the two different sides, took pictures back toward the camp and around the country. Up at Yeti's Pass, we passed by, there's the camp right out in the middle of the broad pass. We went by a couple of peaks, Icefall Peak on one side and 8680 on the other side. I don't think 8680 had been climbed at this time. A few of us climbed it later. This is looking from Yeti's Pass down into the Gakona Glacier. Not a lot of people go down to this area. This wonderful view you're looking at is just looking back at the tent from a little ways over on one side when the clouds are going by. That's rock on the south side of Yeti's Pass, just a crumbly little rock area. We did go over to that rock and walk up on top of it. Nice place, no crevasses up there, you can walk around unroped. This is on the top of that little rock, just looking north over toward 8680. That was 8680. Cleared up the next day or that afternoon or sometime. I don't remember how long we were there. There's the famous Yeti's Cap right near Yeti Pass. That hadn't been climbed at the time. We climbed it later on another trip. And there's just a series of peaks going on the ridges looking east over toward past Gakona Peak and toward the thumb where we were going. And I think that's the thumb there, or the Thorn, not the thumb. The thumb's around the corner. But that's the Thorn, last peak on the ridge there, the white one. Then just more peaks on over toward Kimball. Kimball's the last high peak in the Delta Range. And I think that's looking back up toward the east pass of Gakona. Gakona Glacier is a T-shaped. Oh, here we are in the little bowl. We watch this bowl come right out into the middle of the glacier, at least a half mile from the nearest rock. We walked right up to it. It realized that we were not normal, and it went running away. When we were walking up toward this bowl, we saw this thing way out in the middle of the glacier, a little black spot, and we had no idea how big it was. At first we thought it was a wolverine. And the closer we got, the smaller it looked until we got right up to it. Here we are at the pass where we're putting in our third camp, looking back to Yeti's Pass, back in the distance. That's the peak we're going to climb, the Thorn. We're going to go up the right-hand ridge. As I vaguely remember, there was some rumor about someone else going in and trying it and not getting very far. This was the relatively early days of climbing in the Delta Range. Just locals go there, no spectacular mountains. I think it's 9,800 feet tall, or thereabouts, give or take a few hundred feet. Fairbanks climbers would go down there, nice ski trip into the hills, and enjoyable little peaks to climb, generally called snow slogs. And here we are snow slogging up this peak. We dropped the skis right about this point and started climbing. It's always a choice as to when to drop the skis. Nowadays they take the skis all the way to the top and ski down from the summit. But those are ski people. You know, skis are like snowshoes. They'll get you over the top of snow. But you don't want to get anywhere near a slope on them because the bottom of skis are slick. They slide, you fall down. Especially with 100 and some pound pack on your back. So you don't want to use skis unless you absolutely have to. If you're talking to ski people, they're crazy. Don't listen to them. Typical of these early climbs, we had no idea what we were going to encounter. There were no other stories of what was there. Couldn't Google Earth a thing. And so we had a little more gear than we'd really would have taken on a second trip. And we used some fixed rope that we didn't really need, but we had it with us, some little Dacron rope, just to get over get back on some difficult sections, just conveniently get back. We're still heading up to the first little flat place up there that we're going to put in a camp and take on the ridge. This is a normal slog up to a certain point, and then a little section of ridge that was the difficult part, and going up and down and around rime ice bulges and things like that. Takes a little while. June, nice weather. Daylight most of the night. That's a nice thing about it. You can climb all day and all night, no problem. Summer climbing in Alaska is highly enjoyable. So when you hear these guys telling stories about climbing Denali in Alaska, they're climbing in the summer, and it's daylight all night. So they really got to go out of the way to exaggerate their stories. They talk about it being cold. Well, yeah, they get up at 1 in the morning and take the temperature, and it's cold, and then they get up about 8 o'clock in the morning, and it's nice and warm. The sun's beating down on you. The snow may be cold, but the sun's on you. It's hot. That's looking up the ridge we're going to do, and this is about where we decided to put in a tent to do the ridge the next day. And here's Ken probing for crevasses. That's the best way to find crevasses, just walk out there, and when you fall in, you know there's a crevasse. If you don't fall in, you're good. Probing for crevasses is sort of good, sort of not good. If the bridge is enough to hold you, it's enough to be probed in that and feel like it's not a bridge. Right below it could be a big hole. Now we made a typical error here, done quite often in the early days. We dug a hole for the tent to stay out of the wind. Well, it took a few times to learn this lesson. If you have if you have a normal tent, and there's the tent down in the hole, if you have a normal tent, you dig a hole and you put these blocks up to protect from wind, because wind can just rip your tent apart. But if you have a Stephenson tent, it can handle the worst winds in the world, and we proved that on a few winter climbs. So you would have, if I'd been doing this again, I would have not dug it down in a hole. I would have put the tent right up on the surface so snow didn't drift in the hole, as we will find out. The crux is the last rock you see on the ridge, or saw a moment ago, and it was a little difficult vertical stretch of which we did not get any filming because I was leading that part and I had the camera. Little Bolex Super 8 movie camera, just kept in my little cargo pocket in my pants, pulled it out when it's convenient. You don't ever see movies when it's really nasty, because it was really nasty. Don't take pictures when it's nasty, cold, wind blowing, you're in a tight position, you're supposed to be belaying. This ridge was just a little up and down with rime ice on rocks. A couple places there was a nice slab of what looked like good snow to climb on, only you look between it and the rock and you don't know whether to go on the rock or the snow. There's a big gap between them. Snow is always more convenient. Rock is a little more difficult sometimes, especially with crampons on. But it was pleasant. We headed out at a normal time in the morning. We knew we had daylight all night long, so we weren't too worried. And it's an actual short distance. This is not a big climb. It's comfortable, personal size sort of climb. Never really out in a exposed position for a long time. You can always find a place to hunker down right on the ridge and be comfortable for a while. That's looking down the east face of the Thorn, which has attracted some attention and to my knowledge hasn't been done yet. We did the first ascent and it was on the south ridge. Since then the west ridge has been done and the north ridge has been done. South ridge is the most difficult, but there's nothing too difficult about this hill. It's a very pleasant, enjoyable hill. It just takes 3 days to ski in. I might like this stinky cigar before this thing gets over with. Just a normal climb here. We just leapfrogged. One guy'd lay the other one up to him, he'd lead, and then lay the second person up to him and change leads. Wasn't long enough to do that too often. This was a new area for us, and it is kind of an area that not too many people go into. So when we got to the top, we got to see all the cool places we wanted to go climb next. That east face of the Thorn being one of them. There's Mount Drum to the south, down in the Wrangell Range, and then Mount Sanford, two volcanoes right next to it. A little south and east of Glen Allen, or east of Glen Allen. That's Mount Kimball over there, the last high hill in the Delta Range, east of where we are. I think it's 10,400 feet. We climbed that for the second time, I don't know, a year or two later. Ken and I, in fact, just climbed that. We did the first climb of the north ridge of Kimball. Some other Fairbanks guys did the first ascent. That's looking over at, we got a quick glance at Mount Dooficus, directly north of the Thorn. Very interesting little hill that sticks out by itself. Hadn't been climbed yet. We climbed that sometime later, a few years later, maybe a couple of years later. Now we're on this climb and it goes past, we went through midnight I think, so the film looks a little dark for a while, and then it got light as the sun picked up on the north horizon. The sun just dips down below the horizon a little bit in the winter and is back up forthwith. Now normally the second person wouldn't have to flip the rope out of the way because the first person belaying him would be pulling the rope up, but when the first person is taking pictures of the camera, the second person has to keep flipping the rope out of the way. There we are on the summit, the classic summit picture. I think we're going to get to see another picture of the famous Mount Dooficus here shortly. Come on, Mount Dooficus. Well, maybe we won't see Mount Dooficus. But I like Mount Dooficus. It's a cool mountain. So we'll get one more picture of it, and I'll be quick to point it out. Somewhere on this movie. That's it, right there. There's Mount Dooficus. Oh, there it is. All right, the one on the right there. The one on the left is very similar to it, very close to it. Looking down the Johnson Glacier, Kimball in the background. Kimball, nice hill, Mount Kimball. I think it's been climbed 3 times or 4 times. There's Mount Dooficus. I like Mount Dooficus. That's D-U-F-I-C-U-S. Named after old Dooficus, of course. And that's looking back on our route. Now we got to go down. Going down is always a little psychological impediment. It's a little more dangerous, and you've already done the climb. When you're going up, you can see what's in front of you. Going down, sometimes you have to turn around and you're looking past your feet. That's the south face of the Thorn down there, and that's another excellent climb waiting for someone to walk up it. This little rock was a fun little problem going up and over and back down over, but the crux was the rock between myself at where I was filming and Ken. It was a little more distance on rock, front pointing on rock. I got this stinky cigar here just for a prop. You don't ever want to smoke these things. But they're good story value. Just a slight breeze there. It's always fun on these little up and down places on ridges like this. When the breeze comes up and blows your rope horizontal. This real mountain climbing thing where the photography guy is a climber instead of a photographer shows a lot of really boring scenes because everything moves really slow. Here's this little stretch of this vertical rock that we left a fixed rope on to get back down conveniently. Just some Dacron rope that'll hold your weight and not much more. Of course, leaving fixed rope, and we had another little fixed rope section above that. Leaving fixed rope is an interesting thing. On these mountains here that no one goes to, hardly anyone gets to, you go there years later, you find some old fixed rope and a carabiner or a piton or something frozen in, and you think that's pretty cool. Now, other people would say, oh, you're leaving garbage on the mountain, and if this was a popular route, it would be garbage. But when it's only visited once every few years, it's really fun to find this old stuff. I got some of the old stuff from other people who left stuff in my collection of stuff. Because the next guy, if it's halfway convenient, they always pick it up so they can take it back and tell stories about it. It's a self-cleaning system. Until you get into the National Park Service crowded tourist mountains like Denali, and then they're just a trash trail. Oh, this is in the Delta Range. That's a long ways away from the National Park gulags. The environmentalists tried to make this into a national park and into a state equivalent of a national park, but the climbers were a little bit opposed to that on account as this section of mountains exists in absolute mountaineering anarchy. No climbing regulations, no climbing rangers, no rules whatsoever. You can do whatever you want. You can take a handgun and fire it off into the air from the front of the tent just for fun, if you wanted to carry a handgun. So here we are back at camp, and we're going to see the error of digging a hole to put your tent down in. And it's the result of these nice, really pretty, wispy clouds we're looking at. And we just marveled at these things. They were screaming by, little spider clouds. The film doesn't show just how fast they were blowing by. And while we marveled at their beauty, we knew exactly what they meant. And that's what we encountered the next few days as we sat in our tent. The storm came in, and it was a genuine storm. And this is the next morning. Tent is completely buried in snow. There we opened up the door, or that's just a mosquito netting, and we had to push our way out through the snow that came in. We were yet contemplating that. So here's the tent, buried in snow. Tent could handle it no problem, but it was a little inconvenient. Packs are buried in snow. Now, if we'd been sitting on top of the glacier, right on top, be no problem. But we had to dig out, and it was all white out, and the storm was still going. So we sat there a couple days waiting for good weather, because now we got all this heavy dump of snow on us, and we still had to go down over a couple frightening avalanche slopes, and we decided we'd let the snow settle up before we attempted it, which is all very well and good, because when we got down there a couple days later, the one avalanche came very close to our skis, had come down and threatened our skis, which were just stuck at a spot where we took them off. So here's your normal boring scenes in the tent. People trying to figure out, all right, what are we going to do for a day or so. There's the inner boots of the old Loa Triplex boot, classic in its day. 3 layers of boot. Probably the best quality boot that's ever been made. Typical or classic for winter climbing. Oh, wait, this was summer. But that's okay, I use it winter climbing. There's Ken Irving doing the musical scene there, entertaining the entire audience. Knowing that he's getting filmed, shown now nationally. He's a musician, you know. Nobody else knows that. That's what you do when you're bored in a tent for a couple days. You take movie pictures of your toes. On account, as Ken was the only one sufficiently intelligent to have brought a book to read. The Berlin ending. At that time, that was back before I was sufficiently intelligent to bring a book. So I read the map and have the Hayes quadrangle memorized. Mount Hayes quadrangle, which includes the Delta Range. There we are. That's after we dig out. That's the hole that we foolishly dug down into, and that's how much snow piled up above even that. Down on the glacier. Got to our skis, a little glimpse of the avalanche came close. Heading back up the Yeti's Pass. That rock there is rather well-known, prominent rock. Everybody refers to it when you go by it. Up near Yeti's Pass on the Gakona side. Gakona Glacier, Gakona, that's Athabaskan for rabbit. The Gakona Glacier and Gakona River. Heading down the Canwell, nice, pleasant, warm. This is the best part of every climb. The lower part of the glacier on a little arm of snow going down beside the moraine, just scooting along. Let's see, Richardson Highway and Delta River down there that we're heading for. I'm going to get through this whole movie without firing up this stinky cigar. And here we are, wax for rocks. You got to have ski wax for rocks because that's what you do on occasion. And there we jolly well have it.